I'd like to now welcome Marge Vezer from the South Shore Association for Independent Living. Welcome.
What you just did, but I have to tell you, it is really important to get all the clients involved. What I'm going to talk about a little bit is more of what we need to do as staff. Although certainly it's so important what you just said. South Shore Association for Independent Living is just what the name says. We're on the South Shore, primarily on the South Shore of Nassau County. So when Sandy hit, we got hit pretty hard. Our buildings are more of community residences or scattered site apartments. We don't have the large apartment buildings. That's really not so predominant in Nassau County. But we didn't start our disaster planning with Sandy. We had started actually many years ago, back in the 90s, after we had a couple of fires at some of our buildings. So that really is to say that disaster planning is not just for something as horrible as Sandy, but it can be any kind of disaster, and it also takes a long time to build the plans. We didn't have the money to hire a consultant. I'm not even sure that we really thought about consultants at the time. So we kept going back and looking at lessons learned, how we can continually prepare things. And one of the biggest things that we've done, well, one of the ways that we have the buy-in from staff is that we have a committee that meets. Right now they're meeting monthly, especially now that we're in hurricane season. We had started actually right before that because we knew the summer was coming, so any heat waves. So we look at any kind of emergency like that. Our disaster, we call it a catastrophic events planning committee, and that's made up of people from all of our different programs and departments. So we have program people there, facilities, finance, QA and compliance, purchasing, and management. Because everybody brings something to the table and everybody has a different part when a catastrophe happens. As a matter of fact, just yesterday we had a meeting also, and part of that meeting went to look at tweaking our disaster plan that we have. We don't have a 400-page manual. That's not going to work. People are not going to read it, and you're going to get lost in it. As I think a couple of people here already said. So a couple of things that we were doing yesterday is making sure that we have, for instance, in our main office, we have a supply closet. We call it disaster supply closet that has a lot of our equipment and our go-to bags, in there. We also have the extra food. So we want every June and December, we will rotate to make sure that there's no expired food in there or expiring food. And one of the things that I learned that it was hard to say is that even water, you have to rotate. Even water has an expiration date on it. As strange as that seemed to me at the time. We also make sure that we have the flashlights and the blankets and sleeping bags, because if you have to evacuate, you have to go into a shelter. I'm not sure if anybody here has ever actually been in the shelters, but those cots are really not very comfortable. So we've given people air mattresses and sleeping bags also to either bring into the shelter, or if we have to use our office, because our office is north of Sunrise Highway, and in Nassau County, anything south of Sunrise Highway is considered a flood zone and an evacuation zone. And that's where a lot of our properties are, south of Sunrise Highway. We also took a look at even just within our office, updating our fire logs, again, because we're looking at all kinds of disaster. The other piece is that our office is considered a critical care facility. So when Sandy happened, everybody was out of power for a long time. Our office, we were only without power for about a day or two. We got power back pretty quickly because we were considered a critical care facility. So the thought is, if our office can be, our houses certainly should also be considered critical care facilities. So we have staff who are now contacting the power companies to get that on board also. Why that didn't happen before, I don't know, but that's one of those things that is the lessons learned, that when we see if you can do it in one place, we have to be able to do it, someplace else. Even something, the other piece that we were looking at yesterday, people, when you don't have power, and if you have some of the medications that people want, if you're on insulin, you have to have refrigerated, refrigerated. So what we also did, this was about 2 years ago, was that we purchased the small insulated lunch bags and the ice packs, and we keep a supply of those so that if we have to evacuate quickly, we always have the those ice packs in the freezer. People can take their insulin or whatever kind of refrigerated meds that they need. They can take that with them also. The piece is those that because we have people in all different sites who wanted to have some place, and this is a piece that we're working on now, how do we have that in one coordinated place? Program staff come and go, that they can change, but we want to make sure that you always know who needs to have those insulated bags for the medications. And I guess the piece of that, in terms of the buy-in from staff with all this, is because our staff know that if there's an emergency, they need to be there, but they first have to make sure that they're okay and that the families are okay. And I think if staff know that you're really supportive of them like that, and you know that they have to be okay and their families have to be okay, they're going to give back, and that's the buy-in, with that. I'm no longer surprised at how many of our staff just were right there, just jumped right in, whether it was during 9/11, people who stayed, or now with Sandy. But I think it's because we have that culture of everybody is being supportive, and that's the buy-in that you have from staff, and that's how you get the support from staff. If you give it back to them, they're going to give it right back to you. Another piece that we've been doing for quite some time now is having ongoing meetings with the county and with OEM. Because of the experience that we had with Irene a couple of years ago, when we had to evacuate, and we ended up going from shelter to shelter to shelter, because we were told one shelter was open, then when we got there it wasn't open yet, and there was a lot of miscommunication going on with the counties. And we met with the counties and said, okay, how can we do this better if, God forbid, there's something else like this, never knowing what was to come after Irene. So in terms of the meetings with both the OEM and the county, we had entered into an agreement with them to provide a behavioral health shelter within the shelter also. That meant that if we had to evacuate, that we would have a separate space within the shelter, whether it's a regular shelter or a special needs shelter. We'd have a special space there, because when you figure most of our clients are predominantly have mental health issues, a lot of them are going to be very anxious and upset having to be in these large groups with everything that's going on also. So if we had our own space, separate room, that we can have, we can also this way administer the medications, separately from other people. That was a lot easier, and that was something that we have worked out with both OEM and with the county. As it ended up, it wasn't just for our residents, because we had people from other agencies that the staff didn't stay with the clients. Our staff stayed with the clients. We had a program director who brought her daughter also and stayed in the shelter with the clients. So we ended up also helping out with anybody else from other similar types of agencies when they kind of just dropped off the clients and then left. So our staff were also helping and taking care of them too. The other piece in terms of being involved with and having the relationship early on with the county and with OEM is, in what happened with Sandy, is that we knew even before, well, everybody kind of knew there was something that was going on. They were already calling it Frankenstorm then, but we knew how dangerous this was really going to be before I think a lot of other people did. The day before, the Sunday before Sandy, I received a call from OEM and from the county to come down to the OEM Operations Center. And it was a real learning experience for me because I walked in and I felt like, I don't know if you ever remember the movie War Games, but that's exactly what it looked like, with these big screens all around, and every department from the county has its own little cubicle there. And from what I was told is, it's the day before, but get your people to the shelter now. This is not going to be good. And they explained why with how the computers and the rate and with the weather that goes. Because they said tomorrow the shelters are going to be overflowing. And that is exactly, certainly what happened in Nassau County. So we got our people to the shelter the day before, and we're very glad that we did that. And it also helped us to stake out our space, because we had just been working on setting up the behavioral health shelter with the county. We hadn't actually even gone there yet to do that. That was all in the planning stages before anybody knew about Sandy. So that piece we kind of learned and did on our own. But even prior to that, we had gotten special training from OEM and from the Red Cross in terms of sheltering people. The other piece in terms of emergency preparedness that we do is a very concrete piece. You heard people talk about checklists, and that's the biggest thing in our emergency plan. Again, you can't look at that 400-page book for that. So we have what it's called a 120-hour activation checklist. And it goes through step by step, 5 days before, say, a hurricane comes out. Five days before, the different responsibilities that everybody has within the agency, whether it's from myself, our associate director, our program directors, our finance department, because at some point, even during that 120-hour timeline, our finance department is issuing additional petty cash checks to people. If there's no power, need money somehow, so we'll give extra cash to the programs at that time too. Our facilities department at some point during these hours goes out to make sure that all of our vehicles have the gas in them. Everything is filled up, everything is working like that. They go out to make sure that every site is labeled with where the shut-off valves are, whether it's for electric or gas or whatever that piece is. So it's very concrete from 5 days to the day of evacuation. We also have, as part of a check, so it's not really a checklist, but something we call a quick reference guide. Again, you don't want to have to read through this book. Okay, this is I'm a program director. What am I supposed to do, and who am I supposed to call? So this checklist goes through whatever kind of emergency it is, whether it's a natural disaster to our office, a natural disaster to our properties, a legal disaster, a death of a resident, of a staff person. Again, it goes through the different pieces, but there's a very quick one-page flow chart who each person is supposed to contact. And then that person would know what their responsibilities are from that. And that's also real helpful, because you want to be able to just look at something real quick if you don't remember, and if it's not part of your life, as what Terry was saying yet, because in the middle of that emergency, you're going like, oh my God, I can't think now, and I don't want to think. I want somebody to just real quickly tell me what to do. So it's a one-page piece that will show you exactly what it is. And I guess the biggest thing also is that we know that it doesn't end here. I think we have a pretty good plan. We're constantly tweaking it. As I said, we have every month now. We have our committee meets, and they all have different tasks and work groups within this to tweak it more and to put other processes in place. But it doesn't end there. Terry talked before about the PTSD, and I think that's one of the things that we need to let people know, and that there's a lasting impact a lasting impact financially, emotionally. We see that also in one of the programs that we've started. We were Project Hope. We did Project Hope right after Sandy. We were asked to do that, and when Project Hope ended, we had applied for funding SSBG, Superstorm Sandy Block Grant. And we had funding from that to provide a recovery, case management, and services program. And those staff are providing both support and clinical services to people who are still affected. And that includes people in our programs. The other piece of that money that we got was a little over $2 million is also to do one of our community residences in Island Park over. We're still out from that house. We were able to move back all of our other people we mitigated by moving boilers and up basement in two of our properties in East Rockaway had about 8 feet of water in the basements. Those were very small apartment buildings where we had supported housing on the second floor and office space on the first floor. But you couldn't even get down into the basement, and all of the utilities were down there. So we were out from that for a while. That money came out of our operating budget, but to rebuild our community residence, that is coming from both the capital grant from OMH and the SSBG money. And with that, that's raising the house. It's a little different, again, I think on Long Island, where they're more single-site housing than there is the apartment building. So we'll be actually lifting the house approximately 5 feet to rebuild that. There's also another kind of storm drainage system that we're putting under the ground that will have these very large chambers. I've learned more than I've never thought that I would know, and I figured they never taught me this in social work school. But there are these large chambers that go underground, and it keeps the water, the storm water, in there, and so that it doesn't. And you have to. And the new code, at least in Island Park, is that you have to be able to keep it on your property, not have it go into everybody else's house. So between the house being raised and these giant chambers that are going to be underground, which we had to do all kinds of test borings for to see where the sand was under the ground and how far we could put these and how big these chambers have to be. That will be another piece that we're doing to mitigate this in the future. Will we have to be out of the house again? As Mike was saying, we'll probably have to be out sometime too, but this is, we're still out of that house right now. We're renting another house in another community right now. We really do want to get people back there. So in terms of emergency preparedness, that's basically what we're doing right now, the very concrete kinds of things, again, to make it easier for staff so that we can then help the people that we work with.